Hello and welcome to another Wolftime gaming video. Today we're painting Skarbrand. We're doing the body itself, so it's the part 2. If you want to check out the other video, it's linked below, which is just the base essentially, which is the lava base. But today, as I say, we're going to be doing the actual body of Skarbrand himself, and painting the model and finishing him off. Before we get started though, let's get the kettle on. Okay, so the first part of it was the actual spraying, the base coating of the model, which was done with Rattle Can of Wraithbone, the new contrast range from Games Workshop. I then picked up the first paint, which was a contrast Blood Angels Red, and I just went for that all over the body, as you can see on the video there. I think it went down really well. It seeps into the crevices and things and shades it straight away. I'm so impressed with these contrast paints, and you can see what a difference it's made compared to like dry brushing and things and other techniques. The second one I used was the Contrast Guilliman's Flesh, and I used this around the actual axes themselves to try and give them more of a flesh look. I didn't want them just to be metallic, and the wings. On the artwork for Skarbrand and a lot of other models I've seen done in a similar sort of style, have gone quite dark with the wings and gone with almost a black. And I wanted this to be very different, so I decided to go with the flesh colour. Tried this before with some Tyrannid models that I painted years ago, and I think the wings look really good. I also did, I think there's a video online at the moment of Argel Tal mini, and I did that with a flesh colour as well. So it's that sort of an idea. I quite like the idea of the wings being that sort of a colour, and I think this works really well. And you'll see when you actually see the finished article as well, finished model, because it adds that shading straight away. There's no messing around with this. This contrast paint is brilliant, as I said before. So the next step was to move on to a black colour, and to do that I used Corvus Black. I've quite liked Corvus Black recently. It's more of a grey or a bluey feel to it. It's not that matte dark black, and I quite like it because you don't lose any of the details as much as you do with the black. I never really like to go with black on a model when he's actually finished because of that reason. And I think this just had almost a little bit of a shading. So what I always used to do was use a Baden black, and then I'd dry brush it with a dark grey to try and bring up that detail. And I think this essentially stops me having to do that. The next step was the bones of the wings themselves, which was Xandridust, another base coat from Citadel Miniatures, and essentially I just covered all the anywhere that was bone. So I did all the wings, all the bone areas of the wings. I also did a few did his teeth and a few other bits and pieces around the model as well that you'll see in a moment. I didn't do the ends of the wings or the claw areas. I wanted those to be very different, and you'll see why in a second, which is where we come on to, which was the Rhinox hide. So I wanted to go with a darker colour just to make them stand out a little bit more from the bone. I didn't want them to be the same colour, so any of the small spikes, the horns, all that sort of stuff on the actual head was all done with Rhinox hide. And to bring up a few of the raised areas of the Rhinox hides, we actually used some more Xandridust and a Shebti bone, just to essentially dry brush all of those areas, all the brown areas. And I also went over the bone, which I'd done with the Xandridust with the Shebti bone as well, just to highlight a few of the raised areas of the wings and a few other bits and pieces. There's a few skulls dotted around the model as well, specifically in his sort of mohawk along his back that I did with the same with Xandridust, and then just highlighted slightly with the Shebti bone as well. Next step was the Screamer Pink, just around his mouth, really, his tongue. So I darkened that down when I did the black stage, and then I went with the Screamer Pink just in this time to make that stand out. I also did a few little areas just on the axes that you can see here. There's a few eyes and things on there, and I wanted it to look like stressed flesh, so I went with the pink. And this does stand out quite a lot, but you'll see when we darken it all down at the end, you'll see the difference it makes. I then used a dawnstone layer just on the hair and areas like that, and around the rock around his feet. And at this stage I also glued into the base, because I noticed when I was actually handling the model I was starting to rub off a little bit of the paint, and obviously you don't want that. So yeah, I did that. And also at this stage used lead belcher around all those darker areas of metal that I'd painted, all his armour, and just went with lead belcher to cover the whole thing. And we're then on to the final stages of the model, really, which was the shading of the areas. Obviously, we'd use contrast paint on a few of the bits, so the blood red and the contrast and the flesh. We didn't need to actually use the shades on, but we used Agrax Earth shade on all the bones, all the horns, all that sort of thing. And the Null Oil was essentially used for the metallics, and that really brought all the colours that we'd used together and started to make them look really, really good. There we have it. That's the model actually finished now. You can see I think he's looking really, really good. I'm really pleased with how he's turned out. I think the shades really brought the model together and finished him off. There was a few areas that were a little bit too bright, but they just pull everything together. The axes are really nice looking. You can see the pink, the stressed areas, and you can see the shades have dropped into the recessed areas on the axis, in that definition that I think that it needed, and as well around the actual metallic areas as well. I think the Null Oil just sinks quite nicely into it. The wings are looking really, really good. Turned out, I think the shades really do make that difference, and around the facial areas as well, on the actual area where he's had his flesh torn away, and the horns and things. I think he's come together really nicely. The actual base as well, just in case you haven't seen that, there's a separate video on this one, link below. Make sure you go and check it out for part one, just on how I did the lava effect. But there you have it. It's nice and finished. I'm really, really pleased. Can't wait to get him on the table. I really like the way he's turned out. I did a few different techniques and things using the contrast paints, was a bit different. I think it's turned out really, really nicely. Let me know in the comments down below on what you think. Give me any critiques you want. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to see any more. I'll see you in the next one.